Hi. Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, I'm sort of familiar with IMS's work a little bit because I used to work for BBC Media Action, so I'm aware, the sort of concept is pretty similar in terms of media empowerment. So yeah, great to be talking with you today. Yeah, just by means of sort of quick introduction, we'll go around the table. So my name's George, and I work as a social media strategist within the World Service social team. So it's not to be confused with the World Service English output. We work directly with the languages on improving storytelling, enhancing sort of data analytics, understanding, and sort of translating that into some sort of concrete, actionable points. But yeah, obviously as part of the storytelling side of things, news on TikTok is a huge priority for us. We're slowly but surely rolling out to more and more teams. We have 6 accounts at the moment across the World Service. That's if you're including BBC Learning English. So yeah, so there's huge potential, and yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'll hand it to Lou or John.
You go ahead.
I'm John Johnson. I'm the senior journalist on the BBC News TikTok. So my day-to-day is taking the lead on that and deciding what kind of stories we do and how we do them. And I've been doing that for about 4 months now.
Okay. Right, and I'm Lou. I'm over here. I work in the same team as George, so I look after the social media in general. But since just before the war in Ukraine started, I've been looking at TikTok and how to do news on TikTok. So news on TikTok, how to do it, and why are we doing it? If only this worked. Okay, right. So first of all, we are seeing TikTok as a new platform that signals a paradigm shift. So what we mean by that is that it's a platform that's changing consumer behavior. So it's a platform that's making people behave differently, learn news differently, or interact with other people differently. And so you'll see that historically we had Facebook, and then, it was YouTube and and then, in 2016, it was TikTok. And on the right, you'll see a looping video of exactly how quickly TikTok has been growing in the past 5 years, basically. So if you need any more ammunition to convince your editors in your newsrooms that TikTok is, the place to be, these are all the facts that you need. Now, if that's not enough, you can have a look at this. So on the left, we have a quote from the Reuters digital report, and that's the latest one. And in the latest one, they have, as you can see, they have estimated that, TikTok is reaching 40% of young people, and around 15% of those using it are going there for news. So maybe not directly for news, but they're definitely consuming news, and they're definitely learning about what's happening in the world on TikTok. And on the right, you will see a gender split and age split, but we've addressed the age part already, but the gender split is also quite important because we are wanting to reach more females, and TikTok is the place to be to do that. So there's that. And then the third argument, I suppose, for why TikTok is TikTok's uniqueness. So as a platform, it poses itself, so it describes itself as a video platform. It doesn't describe itself as a social platform. But that doesn't mean that people are not, building communities and socializing. And what's perhaps, more important about TikTok is that it's algorithm. And I'm sure you've all heard about TikTok's algorithm. It's like the stuff of legends, because somehow TikTok has figured out who you are before you even told it who you are. So just by looking at your behavior, at how you interact with content, they are able to figure out who you are and then continue to push stuff that's relevant to you, that you are interested in, your way. And so that basically makes the platform incredibly addictive. It also means that if you found someone that you really like a channel or a creator, influencer, if you like them, then there's a huge chance that you will listen to them on many other issues. So even if you follow like a comedian, once in a while they'll throw out a video where they're commenting on something from current affairs, and you will be swayed by that because you trust them already, you have that relationship with them already. And because of that, again, TikTok is special, and it gives you that kind of intimate experience and intimate connection with your audiences. So you'll get a PDF of all of these texts. So if you need to refer back to them, please go ahead. And these are hopefully all the arguments you need to convince your editors in the newsroom to, explore doing news on TikTok. Right. So now, what works on TikTok and why? So this is where we delve a little bit into consumer behavior. So why are people on TikTok? They're there to get entertainment. They are there to get distracted from whatever else is happening in their lives. Those who do post to TikTok, they express themselves, whether it's something they've seen or a book they've read. And of course, there are people who go to TikTok to learn things. And that's a huge thing. Learning on TikTok is a huge hashtag with a lot of people learning so many weird and wonderful things on TikTok, which is also why you can treat TikTok, and you should treat TikTok, as a search engine. So people who have certain interests in certain topics, they will, younger people especially, they will go ahead and use TikTok to search for answers. Now, the thing is, we provide news, right? But news, if you think about it, can be all of those things. It can be entertaining, it can be distracting, it can help people express themselves or give platform to people who have unique experiences to share. And we most certainly can teach people a thing or two about what's happening or explain events. So it's absolutely possible to do news on TikTok. We just need to find the right tone and the right approach. Now, what does that look like in, so we speak the language of the platform, and we give the audiences something that they can take away, something useful. So what does that look like in real life? So this lady, she is an environmental scientist. I think she's American. She has quite a large following for one person, I suppose. And this on the right, you see, is a BBC article written by our environment correspondent, Matt McGrath. This happened like over a year ago in the build up to COP26. So what she did is she made a video, but using our article. And here's what that looks like.
If you're seeing this video, it's probably because you care about the planet. I'm with ya. It's also very likely that you saw this report this week and are now freaking out. If it is the case, I have good news, because I'm an environmental scientist here to explain that report to you a little bit more. This IPCC report is the most comprehensive report we have on climate change to date. Without bogging you down in all the details of what the IPCC is, it's basically the report that we base a lot of climate policy all around the world on. It's really important because here in the next couple months, we're going to have one of the most important climate summits that we've had since the Paris Climate Agreement. Which, speaking of the Paris Climate Agreement, we're not on track to meet those targets. The biggest takeaway of this report is that under all circumstances, by 2040, we will reach 1.5 degrees of warming. It's inevitable. But the report is clear that if we can cut emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero by mid-century, we will avoid a complete climate catastrophe. So with the unique timing of this report coming out and the summit coming up, the question is, will we put in the work to make our governments act in time? This is going to take all of us, and I'm wondering, are you with me?
So there we go. It's as a climate scientist who is trying to explain what is quite a dry report from the climate authorities, IPCC, and this video of hers, you probably can't see it, but she had at least over 1 million views on her video. And that's the kind of thing that people, again, so she has a large following, she has a loyal following, and people believe her and trust her. And as you can see by these thumbnails to her other videos, she talks quite often about things that are in the headlines that are to do with climate. So, she has a large loyal following, and she's explaining something that's, in the news. So, of course, people are going to trust her. Another example is this lady. I'm not going to play this one in full, but it's just one of those formats that you can definitely explore. This lady on the left, she's a scientist, and as you can see in her bio, she has a PhD in microbiology, and she really became really famous and popular during the COVID lockdown. And again, she's American, and she's been trying to explain like little bits of science to do with the vaccination, with the virus, with all the variants. And she's been trying to do that on TikTok, and she's been trying to debunk other people who have a large following, who are not necessarily understanding the science or just misselling the whole thing. So here's a snippet.
Just kidding, this is my last video, but I just have to give you guys these little tools to have in your tool belt for when people try to question you about why you refuse to get it, okay?
Okay.
Number one, the mRNA that they're using in it is completely synthetic.
That is true.
This is the first time they've ever done that in human history.
Oh, that's not true.
Number two, because it is completely synthetic, normally your body would immediately attack it and eradicate it.
Oh, your body doesn't care if it's synthetic or not. It just wants to destroy foreign
they
things.
had to coat that mRNA in a nanolipid.
That is true.
The purpose of that nanolipid is to keep your DNA from degenerating.
Oh, that's not the
RNA.
job of the DNA. Enzymes do
The
that.
vaccine would be.
So it does go on for a little longer, but basically this lady on the right, she does also have a large following, because I think she's a nurse or something, someone who with medical experience. But you know, obviously the things that she was telling people about vaccines were not true, not entirely, not completely true, and the scientist is literally point by point debunking everything she's saying. So that's another reason that, you know, journalism should be on TikTok, because we should be there to fact check. We should be there to make sure that whatever content that people are consuming is accurate, or is at least, you know, providing them with the right kind of information to make important decisions.
Just kidding.
Right. So what can news providers do? Because the ones that I showed you just now, they were influencers, right? They were people who were, you know, experts in their own fields, and, you know, they knew exactly what they were talking about, and that's why they had credibility and trust. But what can news providers do? So here are some of the examples. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen the Washington Post TikTok guy. If not, I urge you to go ahead and see him. Or rather just check out his channel. It's actually just Washington Post channel anyway. Yes, and then these other examples are from our BBC's different world services. Which one do I show?
Oh, I think I really like the Ukraine one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So just for context, this one is from the BBC Ukrainian team, and what they were trying to do is cover the fact that Ukraine had at one point, I can't remember how many months ago, become an official candidate to join the EU. And they did this little video to talk about how, even though Ukraine and Moldova at the time got officially recognized as candidates to join the EU, there were actually, in fact, quite a few other countries who've been recognized as official candidates since, like, you know, late 90s. So here's a little treatment that is absolutely TikTok native. So there we go. That was basically, you know, Ukraine and Moldova sort of congratulating each other on, you know, becoming officially recognized as candidate countries to join the EU, and then realizing that there were so many people, so many countries are still waiting to be officially sort of, you know, recognized as part of EU. And plus, at the end, they still need to hold a referendum on whether they would like to join the EU. So it's far from kind of, you know, and in this video, as you can see, there was absolutely nothing. She didn't say anything. It was just a lot of acting and you know, using captions to engage with audiences, and that was a great example. I really want to show the Arabic ones, because I think we have Arabic speakers here, right? Okay, I don't know if you guys have seen this one already, but this one is not even on TikTok, it's on Reels. But that also goes to show that you don't have to be on TikTok to start exploring the visual language and the tone you know, of TikTok. So there we go. This one is on monkeypox, so you might have figured it out. Yeah, that is no monkey. Okay, right, let's see.
هل تعرفون أن مرض جدري القردة ليس جديداً؟ فأول حالة بشرية سجلت سنة 1970 في إفريقيا. الجديد هذه المرة هو ظهوره فجأة في 17 دولة خارج إفريقيا، كما سجلت أول حالة في المنطقة العربية بدولة الإمارات. فماذا عن أعراض الإصابة؟ تبدأ بصداع وحرارة وآلام في العضلات واحتقان في العقد اللمفاوية، ثم يظهر طفح جلدي. تدوم هذه الأعراض عادة ما بين أسبوعين و4 أسابيع. تنتقل العدوى أساساً عبر الاتصال الجسدي بالمصابين من خلال الجهاز التنفسي أو من خلال جروح الجلد، وتنتقل أيضاً في حال ملامسة الأسطح والأغراض الملوثة بالفيروس. إلى الآن لا يوجد علاج لجذر القردة، ولكن تبقى أفضل طريقة لحماية أنفسكم من الفيروس هو تطبيق كل ما تعلمناه خلال جائحة كورونا.
So there we go. Okay, delighted faces. Excellent. I'm glad you liked it. Right, for the reason of time, I'm not going to show all the other examples, but I will send you all the links so that you can check them out yourselves and get some inspiration.
Lizzo played James Madison's old flute.
Go through all of these. Okay, this is where I hand over to John, who can talk about the BBC News site.
Hello. Yes, so on the BBC News TikTok, we're slightly more constrained in terms of like brand continuity, because I think people expect like the news one to be a bit more serious, but it doesn't mean we can't also kind of experiment and tell the news in a TikTok way. So just a brief overview of how we kind of choose what videos to do. We want, as with all BBC content, we want our videos to bring value. We want someone to watch the video and then learn something from the video, not just repeat our content that's elsewhere. We also like to showcase what we kind of think is the BBC's like unique value, which is the reach we kind of have around the world. Like we have all the different language bureaus, we have World Service, we have a reach that is kind of unparalleled when it comes to other broadcasters. So we like to show that off when we can. And then the other thing is kind of dovetailing with that is we do have a lot of videos that come from around the world where we can kind of show people either perspectives or lives they may not have seen before. And that really does well on TikTok because it kind of dovetails with what people expect on the app, which is unfiltered views into people's lives. So if you can replicate that but do it in a news way, it works really well on the app. And then, yeah, sorry, carry on. And then, so our videos, we are newsy, but we're not married to the top line. And that is because the TikTok algorithm, each video that you post can surface on the For You page any time in the next 30 days. So it pays to not, you don't have to avoid the top line, but if you can speak about a topic without particularly marrying it to a certain event or date, then it does help the video stop being dated and it does help it carry on being evergreen. And the number one rule is we don't post things that we don't understand. Like you need to understand the audience. It's 18 to 25-year-olds is the audiences we're trying to target on there. So don't post anything you don't understand, don't use any words you don't understand, and don't post anything without having first broke it down into the simplest terms you can.
What's this one then?
Yeah.
Nice.
UK will enter a recession.
Sorry, before we play this one. So for instance, this one, I think a lot of news kind of like our articles on these kind of assume knowledge. So it's saying like the UK is going into recession, or that all everything that's been on this week about like the financial crisis and like economics, and people just don't understand the terms that kind of get bandied around. For instance, this one, we were like, okay, so what is a recession? Do people know what a recession is? And we posted this and got, I think it was 2.4 million views in the end. So it just shows that people do have a kind of thirst to understand what these terms mean. So play this one.
The Bank of England says a recession is coming.
The economy is now forecast to enter recession later this year.
But what does that mean and how does it affect you? Normally, the UK economy grows and generally the country gets richer. But when it shrinks for 6 months or more, that's what's called a recession. The Bank of England has predicted that the economy will shrink again later this year, which would put the UK into a recession. During a recession, there's less jobs, less money for wages, and less tax money for the government to spend on things like benefits, public services, or tax cuts. All this means people in the UK could struggle to get onto the job ladder, or they could lose their current jobs, they could find it hard to get a promotion or a pay rise. They could obviously help to cope with the rising prices. So how long will it last? Well, it's actually really difficult to tell because it's being influenced by things such as the war in Ukraine. The UK recession in 2020 lasted for just 6 months, and the one in 2008 lasted for over a year.
Yeah, so I think that's a good example of that. And then that hit the target audience, so that got around 2.4 million views, and about 50% of those were 18 to 25-year-olds. So yeah, good, a success.
UK.
There we go.
And then, so how do we make them? So we use FCP as an editing app. but obviously that isn't accessible all around the world. Like there is editing apps on your phone which do the basics, and there is also an in-app editor on TikTok which you could use just to stitch videos together. One of the benefits of TikTok is that it's vertical video, so you don't need all this fancy camera equipment, you don't need all of that. If you've got a phone, you can make a TikTok and you can tell news on TikTok, which is really good. We're kind of spoiled for choice because we have our newsroom and we have material coming around from the world, but in general, a good thing to think about workflow if you're trying to set this kind of thing up is to have someone at your base who can edit / choose material, and someone who can go out and film and gather material is kind of what we've learned as well. And just in general, so these are the kind of formats that I kind of touched on before, but I would say the most important thing is the hook of the video. Like you could have the best video in the world, but if you don't stop people from scrolling through TikTok, they're not going to see it. So once you've got your video together, a lot of effort should be put into that first like 3 seconds. So that's where you should have a thumbnail which tells you exactly what the video is about. You should have a scripted line, which is the hook, which kind of makes someone stop and listen to the hook. And you should have the best video or pictures you have at the start. What am I saying? And then after that, it's all down to kind of like content density. Like if you want to keep people watching, you have to keep them engaged every second. So it's how much content can you fit into every single second of a TikTok? Because the minute people stop learning, the minute people are not engaged, the minute people aren't learning something, they will just flick off. So it is just up to you to kind of like keep that intensity up. These are kind of examples of that. So we had on the right there is your questions answered. So that one kind of goes back to engagement. So people on TikTok like it when they feel like you're talking to them. So that one was framed around the most Googled questions around Liz Truss, who just became our Prime Minister. But that one was kind of framed as, these are the questions that you're asking about Liz Truss, and we're going to answer them. So that kind of is that kind of back and forth. And then the one next to it was our one about young Tories. So it was kind of seeing the perspective that you don't normally see, because there was these kids who can't vote in like a general election, but because they're members of the Conservative Party, they could vote in the Conservative membership leadership race. Then the one next to it is one that did really well. It was like from the front line. So that one is kind of about access. So people enjoy videos where they can be in the heart of the story and like see stuff that they wouldn't normally see. And if we can do that as a news organization, it works really well. And then explainers is the recession one, obviously, but I would say don't rely on explainers. It is kind of easy to think, okay, we need to explain everything about it, but sometimes stories are video led. For instance, the one on the left there was the North Korea firing a missile over Japan. So we originally started scripting that as an explainer. And then halfway through, we looked at the videos, and there's all these videos of people stopping while like the sirens like kind of ring out. We were like, actually, that's more effective. Like if we just do that and then put a little bit of text on screen, that tells the story better. And I think that got like 1.8 million views in the end. So it's just, yeah, it's picking what format you need to tell the news. These are all ones that can work, can be in your toolbox, but just think about the story and think about which format you'll use.
Did you want to play out?
Did I want to play out any of them? Which one? Show the either the North Korea or the Ukraine one, I think.
Don't make me show the young Tory ones, because that was so cringe. Yeah.
The drone that is flying over the Russian
I can't show
position.
this one, sorry, because it's half hidden, so I'm just going to show this one instead. I'm so sorry.
Liz Truss is going to be the UK's next Prime Minister, but a lot of you have questions about her, so here's some answers. Let's get the basics out the way. Liz Truss is 47 years old. She lives between London and Norfolk. She's married to an accountant and she has 2 teenage daughters. Mary Elizabeth Truss is a Conservative MP. She first entered Parliament back in 2010 and she's held some pretty senior positions under various different Prime Ministers, David Cameron, Theresa May, and most recently she was Foreign Secretary under Boris Johnson. South West Norfolk, and before that she was a councillor in Greenwich, having tried and failed twice previously to be an MP in West Yorkshire. So Liz Truss was born in Oxford, but then she moved to Scotland when she was 4. Liz Truss went to a state school in Leeds, and then she did a philosophy, politics and economics degree at Oxford. And after she graduated, she became an accountant at Shell.
Liz Truss was a Liberal Democrat when she was a student. She even spoke at one of their conferences in favour of abolishing the monarchy. But then when she was at Oxford, she switched to become a Conservative. Yeah, Liz Truss campaigned for the UK to stay in the EU, arguing that Brexit would be a triple tragedy of more rules, forms and delays when trying to sell stuff to Europe. But after the result, she appeared to change her mind, saying that Brexit would be an opportunity to shake up the way that things work.
And I think that one as well was kind of an example of like language, even when you're explaining like political stuff, which can be pretty boring, let's be honest. It's using the right kind of language, just stripping it back to fact. And like one that I wish I had, but we only posted yesterday, was we had like a BBC News investigation about begging on TikTok. So it's refugees in camps in Syria using TikTok to beg, and TikTok takes 70% of those proceeds. So that went out on the site and got 1.2 million views on the site. And then we also had a TikTok version of it where we worked with them and the BBC Arabic department to make a TikTok version of it where it was like spoke the language of the app. It had like the presenter. We did a script, but then used bits of their documentary. And that got 1.1 million views on TikTok alone. So it kind of shows when you do it right, you can rival even the site itself when it comes to reaching people. And I can guarantee that that will have reached more 18 to 25-year-olds than the story did.
Yeah, and also talking about the platform on the platform, it just, yeah, it just gets people feeling like, oh yeah, you're here with us, like, you know, you're in this environment with us, since you understand everything that's happening, because a lot of people will have come across those lives actually in their For You page. Right.
I mean, this might be a good junction to sort of answer some of the questions that have come into the chat.
Oh,
yeah. So one of the questions from Chris, so Chris Pekin, sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly. He's asked, do we have TikTok figures for countries represented here in the workshop? So the best place to go for TikTok figures and what we rely on is either We Are Social reports that come out annually. They'll give you a sense of audiences across all social media platforms, just to get a sense of, yeah, how big is the appetite, because that's definitely something we take into consideration as we're launching TikTok channels. Henrik, oh, you've just asked that as well. And then we've got a question again, apologies if I'm going to absolutely butcher this name. PE Son Win has asked a video question, 1 by 1 square versus 9/16 vertical. What is your suggestion? Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all definitely say 9 by 16, although saying that, you know, a lot of people will perhaps use like a square video at the top and then have it like, in fact, in like the BBC News one you showed, you know, a video at the top and then a presenter below. So that's quite a good way, you know, if you don't want to zoom into a video and totally ruin the quality of it, that's a way of kind of adjusting your format so that it looks nice.
Oh, it also sort of gives you, if you do go for the square one in the middle, then that sort of gives you space for more furniture, so you can perhaps add more context in the captions, you know, in the black space that you have. Yeah. Totally.
And then Reels v TikTok. Does the same things work on Reels as TikTok? Any major differences?
So we've actually had a lot of success. We've started putting our BBC News TikToks on Reels, and they do incredibly on there. I think the one we showed you with Ione got around 2.8 million views. The TikTok Beggar one that I mentioned, we put on yesterday, and that's got around 2 million views. It's people kind of on Instagram are responding to the same kind of tricks that kind of work on TikTok, which is good to know. I think that kind of comes down to the fact that all apps are slowly becoming TikTok. Like, I don't know if you saw today, like Twitter's just put, if you click on a video now, it will take you through suggested videos in a TikTok scroll. Instagram's pushing Reels, which wants to be TikTok. So basically, yes, TikTok does work on Instagram Reels is the short answer.
I would say that the only difference is like the platform itself. So again, like the visual language is the same. So if you know, like I showed you the Arabic one, right? They posted that on Reel because they don't have TikTok yet, but that's the same kind of visual language, the same sort of playfulness and the same tone. And the only difference is that on TikTok, you are hopefully trying to appeal to people who are, first of all, younger, but also people who are not following you, who are not aware of you as a brand. Whereas on Instagram, you usually get that into your feed if you already follow that channel. So if you already follow BBC News, then that becomes, you know, that gets suggested to you. Whereas on TikTok, you get to hopefully reach newer audiences.
I have a question. The first one you showed, first of all, I think it's extremely inspirational. You're taking us through what you're doing, but I was just, this is just a fundamental thing. The first one we saw was this scientist, climate scientist, and she was talking. I couldn't really differentiate between her and then when it was a BBC reporter. And I know that's the form of the TikTok, but isn't it like she's then speaking on behalf of BBC? And here we are talking about something that at least used to be a bit political, controversial. How bad is the situation? Is it human created, and blah blah blah. Can you follow my question here?
I think what you're talking about is attribution. So if someone sees that BBC content and sees someone speaking in front of the BBC content, are they going to assume they're a BBC journalist? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, they would feel that this is a BBC journalist talking, and this is the opinion of BBC because it was opinionated. Yeah. And then being a public service provider, then I was just feeling, okay, this is taking me to another step than what I usually see from your end. So just if you have any considerations there when you take in experts and they don't have a journalist asking questions, but they just go like she did, but it was working perfectly fine. But I just felt that now she was sort of taking the full screen of BBC as such.
Yeah, so that is kind of a problem in terms of like people can just take our stuff and then talk about it. But I mean, that's not something that's native to TikTok. You see that on Twitter, you see that on other social platforms. People will take our news and then talk about it or give their take. So, and I think the important thing is with hers, she kind of attributes who she is and why she's talking about this. So she says, I am a climate scientist, and she has kind of the verification to back herself up, and she's perfectly entitled to then give her kind of take on it. And it doesn't take away from our news, it more kind of talks to her audience about it.
I think that also plays into what TikTok is. Like, it's not a platform for breaking news. It is a platform for takes. So yeah, you know, similar to you know the BBC News one on recession. You know, people already know that there's a recession, but it's breaking it down and offering a take on it. But yeah, I mean, it is an interesting point because really, you know, we should be taking those opportunities ourselves. You know, I mean, that was before we'd launched the BBC News TikTok anyway. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting point, but ultimately, I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, certainly any creator that was to take our content and not represent it, you know, correctly, that would obviously be more of an issue. But, you know, to be honest, it's nice to see BBC content playing into the broader conversation. You know, obviously the IPCC report wasn't, you know, it's just attributed to a BBC News article about it. But yeah, so it's great to see us in those conversations, but I totally get your point.
Another thing is on TikTok, I think your brand identity is very much tied to your face. So the Ukrainian TikTok channel, for example, because of staff shortages, not because of, like, you know, it wasn't a deliberate decision, because of staff shortages, there's only one person who, you know, features on all of them. And, you know, and people who come across that, you know, they will associate her with BBC Ukrainian. And the same way that people who came across that environmental scientist, they would not associate her with, you know, the BBC, because presumably they follow her. Like I said, you know, they are loyal followers and they will trust what she's saying. So there's no sort of, you know, like, they won't recognize her as the face of the BBC so much as just, you know, this person that they already think that they have a relationship with because they trust her takes on all these environmental headlines.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So do we have any more questions?
We just had a new one. Can't see it.
Yeah.
Is it best to show host personality in TikTok?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, it's making, making all the whole, I don't know, the whole society, that's what is it called? Well, basically the whole TikTok sort of, community, that's the one.
Yeah.
The whole TikTok community feels like you're part of that community rather than you're an outsider coming in to lecture them about things, right? Yeah.
It kind of comes back to the idea as well, like when you're telling news on TikTok, you're not competing with other news organizations, you're competing with the entire like ecosystem of TikTok. Like you're there as a very small part of this wider network, which is people talking to each other in a very unfiltered, personality-led way. So it is good to lead with personality, but you can still do that, as we've been shown, like on the BBC News TikTok, you can have a personality and not show an opinion and still be impartial, which is a line to walk, but can be done.
Yeah, I think that's why we were kind of hesitant to launch into TikTok, because people assumed like, oh, the style of it means that you have to be opinionated and like, have that impacts our impartiality. But I think we've now struck a tone in which we're able to still like have fun whilst maintaining our values.
And also personality is something that will help you in the sense that like the influencers I showed you, and I've mentioned that they are specialists in their own fields, right? Whether it's medicine or climate science. But if you have like a reporter who reports generally on everything from like, I don't know, from recession to climate science, then it's really hard to, to show that passion unless you like to convince people, right, that this matters, unless you show a bit of personality, show a little bit of like your passion about that topic. Like recently we had a workshop where a team of colleagues were asked to do something about women's football. And I told them that I have absolutely zero interest in women's football or sport. But anyway, but what they did is they said, okay, well, if you're not interested, then you won't watch this video. And I said, no, you need to find a way to sell it to me. And the way they sold it to me was by showing me how passionate they were about that football. So it was almost like sharing an experience, sharing their passion about women's football, right? So I don't necessarily care about the football, but I care that someone was passionate enough about something to make a video about it and share it with me. So, that's why personality really does matter.
Classic example of that is like Francis Bourgeois, this guy who just totally blew up in the UK. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he's a guy that's like mad into trains and just cannot get enough of trains. And let's face it, most people aren't interested in trains, but his passion just makes you actually fall in love with him. So yeah, that's a classic example of that.
He's written a book for him.
I know, but just in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
Henrik, you've asked how long does it take to make a TikTok story like the one from Ukraine with the different positions of the host? Yeah, I mean that obviously requires sort of overlaying footage for each position that she was in, but yeah, they I mean, I guess your sort of day-to-day on making TikToks.
It really depends. Like it normally doesn't take more than a day to make a TikTok, and some of them, if they're pretty simple, you can get them out in like 2 to 3 hours. If it's just video and text, that's easily done. If it's something where you need someone to be on camera and then spice that with images and graphics and stuff, that does take a little bit longer. But and then if we've got long-term planning stuff, that can take longer, but that's more because we have like editorial and legal that takes a while to kind of like get through. But yeah, in general, I wouldn't say it takes more than a day to make a TikTok.
And if you have the capacity, it's great to, John alluded to that earlier, to have someone who's really strong with editing, to sort of help, because some people will be great at filming and presenting, but they're going to be rubbish at editing. So if you have those kind of, divided skills and, those different kind of, points of strength, then absolutely play to them. And, and that might speed up the process. Yeah. But also once you get into that workflow, once you get into, that sort of familiarity, you'll have seen that the majority of the videos do not look polished. Some sentences start half the way, some words are cut off, nobody really cares about how it looks, they just care that someone cared enough to make a video about it, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be so like completely super polished. Yeah,
So looking at these questions,
Oh.
and so yeah, we've put the link to the investigation on the Syrian TikTok beggars in there. I would recommend watching that, not because I'm just promoting our content, but that one is a very clear example of how you can do investigative journalism and that's one way you can go and have a look at how they did it on the site and how they did it in text, and then how we've done it on TikTok, because that's a good way to kind of see how the two kind of different mediums kind of work. And then what about recommended duration? So under a minute is you'll get rewarded for that. Like under a minute is they tend to do better, but we have been pushing it recently. Most of our videos on the BBC News TikTok are between 1 minute and 2 minutes. For instance, that begging one was like 1:45, and that's still gone over 1 million. And then we've been experimenting with long form documentaries on there at the moment. So we had one up there the other day that's like 3 minutes 60, and that's still got like 100k views. So like the shorter the better, but they are letting you push the boat out further now.
Yeah, I mean, from personal experience, like when I'm scrolling the algorithm, like if someone's got me hooked, it's like I end up watching like some videos that are like 5-6 minutes long. So it totally depends. Maybe now's a good time to jump into the sort of more practical side of just giving you the insight into like how you'd film.
Do you want me to stop sharing and then we can start? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I can see my passcode. Oh, no, it's hidden. There we go.
Don't worry.
Oh, that's fine. So yeah, so this is now within Instagram. Oh, my forehead's very shiny. My ring light's not working today. So yeah, so I was going to basically talk you through how to go about making short form video within app. Obviously a lot of the stuff that BBC News do, and also what we do, requires additional editing tools like FCP, Adobe Premiere, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm just here to sort of demonstrate that you don't necessarily need to do that all the time, and you can actually do a lot within the app. And feel free, by the way, if you have Instagram, to sort of open up Instagram and head to the Reels section, and you can kind of follow along as well if you'd like to do that. Just maybe it's a good time to ask who has access to Instagram. Does it? I'm assuming everyone has Instagram, but maybe not. Henrik's, but yes, okay. All right, well, yeah, feel free to open up and play along. I mean, and also I'm conscious that some of this may seem very basic. I'm not quite sure what the skill level is in the room, so feel free to ignore me if I'm explaining very simple stuff that you already know. So for context, this is now within Instagram Reels, so we're showing the options of how to make Reels. You can see that I can flick cameras. And yeah, missed you there. So I'll just talk you through the icons on the side. So up first we have music. As the BBC, we can't use commercial music on our platforms, unfortunately. So often what we'll do is add music later in post-production. And then next from there you have the filter button. So you can see some branded Nike mask has appeared. So just to talk you through some of the tabs, I mean, these are all appearance led, making me look like I have lovely blushed cheeks. And then, but what I want to talk to you about most importantly is the search functionality. So obviously nature of TikTok Reels is often it's green screen led. So from here you can do a quick search. And this is probably going to be the most important filter that you'll be using. So once you're in the green screen app, you can then add media. You can see I like to do a lot of cooking, so this is what I'll use as my background. So yeah, it's as simple as that, essentially, just being able to add media. And yeah, you can see the thumbs and fingers there twisting it, so I can adjust myself. And even while recording, I can sort of move myself around, which is something we've seen actually, is people sort of explaining, say I was explaining, and here's the egg where, I added on top, over here are the noodles, so people do that. So that's something to bear in mind. If I tap the filter button again, you can see that under my saved tab, I have a few extra green screen options as well. So reveal background's quite a good one. So, if I was right up close to the camera and you couldn't fully see the image behind me, I could then say I'm talking about something, and then essentially by tapping the screen, I can make that image disappear and reappear. So yeah, it's worth mentioning that all of these filters are Instagram owned. Again, this one's pretty handy. So pop-up will allow you to talk about something, you can point to it. And similarly, window is kind of the opposite. So I can be here in the window talking about something else. And the last thing is disappear. So again, I could be, sorry.
The opposite to reveal then.
Essentially, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've lost it now. Go back. It's literally disappeared. Yeah, disappear here. Just to quickly demo that one. So yeah, could be talking about this and then just tapping myself. I'm able to disappear, but still talk about what might be on screen. So again, for a news context, that might be quite a handy one to have.
You could use that as a quiz almost.
Yeah, like reveal the answer. Yeah. Already lose throwing in formats. The mind is constantly going. No, it's magical. And then so over here you then have how long you're going to be filming for. Obviously the nature of all of these platforms is that it's very quick fire. So unless you're an incredibly engaging speaker and you want to go on a monologue for 90 seconds, you can allow that to go on for 90 seconds, but I would limit yourself at 15 definitely. So then when I hit record, you can see the timer will run for 15 seconds there. So yeah, and then so aside from that, we also have speed. So speed might be quite an interesting one if you were, say for example, you're on location and you wanted to give people a sense of journey. You could film the journey and then speed that up. That might be quite a nice way of demonstrating that. Or similarly, if there's something super impressive happening in front of you and you wanted to record in slow motion, that could be another option. So you adjust the speed on the side here depending on what you want. The next one's layout. So you can choose different layouts. Let's go for this one. And again, if you just want 2 images or more to show up at the same time, this would be kind of where you can add that. So I'll go add 1, and I should be able to adjust it, although it's not letting me for some reason. Let me add the second one first. So it allows you to add, it's added them as videos, interestingly, even though they're stills. But yeah, that's essentially the layout function there. And so you could lay up images, and then in the next section, Instagram lets you add a voiceover, which often we'll do on a laptop. So the quality is a little bit better, but if you don't have those sort of facilities or resources, all of that can be done in app too. And also that's sort of the beauty of TikTok and Reels, is that it's very native. Like you don't have to, not everything has to be, super perfect in terms of production quality. I mean, in terms of the green screen, for example, you'll sometimes see a little bit of a glow around people's heads where it's not quite working. But honestly, if the personality and the presenter is, invested enough in the subject, you don't necessarily need to worry about that. People will still watch and be engaged. So up next we have the timer, which I think is useful to have. So basically, if you want a countdown before you're launching into something that you're filming, this is a really nifty feature, and it prevents what has been sort of termed the millennial pause. There's a lot of content where the sort of first millisecond or so will be someone sort of looking down or not fully engaged, and that's been coined as the millennial pause. So if you want to avoid that, I am a millennial, so it can't be helped really, but yeah, essentially you can do that 3, 2, 1, and then you can go straight into what you're talking about without having that little chunk at the start. So yeah, so that's worth bearing in mind. There is also this dual feature, so this has been rolled out as again, social tools love to copy each other. There's Lou, give you the peace out. So yeah, so this is a great feature. Say for example, if you were interviewing someone, maybe as a reel, and you wanted to both see your face and their face at the same time, or you were telling them something perhaps that prompted some sort of crazy reaction like that. This is quite a cool one to use, but yeah, again, it's actually just Instagram copying Be Real, which is like a new social, relatively new social tool platform. And then we have Align as well. So Align is quite a good one. Say for example, I want to pick up from my last shot and be in the exact same place. You can see that the last frame of my last shot was there. So in order to kind of maintain consistency, this might be quite a good one to use. Say for example, you're changing your green screen background, but you want to like maintain in the same place. Again, like I said, I mean, people aren't that fussed about these sort of things in app. You can see like the example that Lou gave there with the environmental scientist, that she was all over the place, and there's no sort of attempt to like align with the last shot. That's fine, because ultimately she's interesting, and she's using, what I like about her is that she's doing this and then she's like zooming in to like emphasize sort of key points. There's a bit of a lag, isn't it? Yeah, so that's a really handy way of like illustrating a point. If you're saying something and then you've got the sort of the punchline at the end, the mad stat that is going to blow people's minds, you can really zoom in and add that sort of dramatic effect. So yeah, so if we hit next, these are all the clips that I've now filmed. This is not particularly interesting, but I'm just going to talk you through what's at the top now. So we've got the download button, which is the arrow there. So that's quite handy if you want to then edit in a different app. Like we said, we then add our music after. So adding our music in either on a phone. So VN is a good video editing app. We recommend that. It's free and it's amazing, the functionality within it. But yeah, otherwise you can download and then obviously export to your computer, and add any additional bits that you need to add. We also have music. Again, music, as I'm sure might be similar with you guys, probably a no-go in terms of commercial music. There's also the additional effects button if you wanted to apply an effect to the whole of your video. Kind of less relevant, but some people like to have, for example, like an aesthetic running throughout their whole video. Probably not something that we as the BBC News or you guys as IMS would potentially necessarily use, but just so you're aware of that. There are also stickers. So this would be where you add any sort of GIFs or emojis. So I can search for a smile. Let's go for the cool guy. I can resize that and say if in a particular part of the video I was saying something was cool or interesting and I wanted that to pop up in time with me talking about that specific thing, I can then edit the clip. I can edit the emoji by tapping the emoji there, and I can, for example, just bring it in. Maybe I'll bring it in on the zoom. I'll have it pop up there. So So now when you watch the video back, you can see it's not here, it's not in the video. And then as we approach the zoom in the clip, it will pop up there. So that might be a way, you know, to illustrate a particular point in your video. So that is that. And if you should be able to get rid of it. There we go. And then otherwise you can draw on it, and you can also add text. So we tend to use our own BBC text. So, you know, we wouldn't necessarily use this. But in terms of best practice, a great thing to do is add a title to your video at the very start. So, you know, as we said, we're trying to stop the scroll. So we could say, you know, TikTok tutorial, so that even before I've started speaking, people know what it's about straight away. And again, you can see at the bottom the text has appeared, and I just want that only at the start of the video. Then maybe when the frame changes, I can do it there. So you can see there it sort of disappears. Oh, I'm getting it slightly earlier, yeah. But yeah, so that's quite a nifty feature to use. I don't know how in terms of restrictions on branding that you guys have. For us, we would be adding our own sort of BBC font, which you can do in VN, by the way. So if you guys are use a particular font, you can upload your own font into VN, which is interesting. How are we doing for time?
We have 15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. Yeah, so I think that's kind of it. I probably don't have time then in that case to show you VN, or do I? I mean, we might throw it out to questions first. Do you guys have any questions?
Oh, it's worth noting there as well. A lot of those features basically the same in TikTok as well, because Reels and TikTok are very similar. So if you can do that, you can use the TikTok editor as well.
Yeah. I mean, the reason, actually I should have mentioned at the start, the reason why we use the Reels editor is because there's no branding, and then we can download it and then also use it on TikTok, whereas TikTok adds branding. But there are tools you can use to like remove the TikTok branding, websites online. But yeah, for the sake of ease, kind of why I'm in Instagram Reels.
And just to answer your question about copyright, I mean, that's a conversation between you and your lawyers. But for us, we basically we are going by the principle that if it is native to the platform, then it is there for us to use. However, it also means that if you use, like, say, even those stickers or emojis or GIFs that are, you know, in Reels in Instagram, then you shouldn't download it and then just wholesale upload it back onto TikTok, or the other way around. So there are things that are only available in TikTok. There is music that is only available in TikTok, and it's like, you know, they've reached that agreement between TikTok and whoever owns the copyright to their music. So if you go ahead and then just download it from TikTok and then post it on Reels, that is going to cause issues. So, and also another thing is, for TikTok, anything that's under 60 seconds is at a slightly reduced chance of being flagged for any kind of copyright problems if you use music. So yeah, so if you find that you have you know, a piece of content that has music but is over a minute, then it's quite likely that TikTok will either pause it and then wait for their own people to assess whether that, you know, that there's any sort of copyright contention, or just, like, you know, take it down. So you know, that's another good reason to sort of keep it short, especially if you want music. And what was the, oh yeah, and also in terms of jumping on viral sounds, again, if it's native to the platform and it's not like a song that has potential commercial copyright use, then, you know, you should be able to do it, especially if you keep it short. But we are not doing that just yet. But another way to engage with people is to offer a sound that people can then use as well. So, you know, have we done that? We haven't.
No. Yeah, I mean,
the BBC News. Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with the BBC News bongs, the dum, you know, that, but that's basically just a sound on TikTok, and people, like, you know, pretend to read headlines, you know, using that music, and it's great. It you know, it's like any publicity is good publicity. So yeah.
There's a lot of questions.
So-
What's the button?
Right.
Where do you see TikTok Reels? I think there were a few more up above that we didn't answer.
No, I think this was fine now.
There was one about what is your strategy now?
Wait, we have a strap. Wait, oh, right. Yeah.
How will you roll out to new countries? So yeah, I mean, we definitely factor in, like I said, sort of market potential. So yeah, definitely worth looking at. We are social figures to get a sense of, you know, is it actually going to be beneficial to set up a TikTok channel? And then yeah, essentially, you know, obviously it's very different to, you know, our sort of traditional output. But a case in point of a, you know, in terms of a success story for us is that the Ukrainian TikTok you see, Evgenia, she, you know, she's a TV presenter by day. I mean, also a TikTok, and now a TikTok presenter by day as well. So her, if you compare her presenting style, it's very different. And you know, Lou worked like incredibly hard and did amazing work with her to like make sure that you know, they were native to the platform, and you can even track that progress as well, because they launched obviously in like the circumstances in the country, and then, you know, there's a journey of her becoming kind of more relaxed and more native and sort of understanding what the platform is about. So yeah, there's a lot of work we need to do with teams, definitely, to make sure they have the resources. You know, as John said, you know, it can take up to a day to make some TikToks. Even for these tiny short videos, I think that often surprises people how much time and editing can go into them, particularly because, you know, the whole style on these platforms is very tight cuts and you know, impressive editing. So yeah, that takes a lot of sort of capacity building on our side. But yeah, these are kind of all the factors we think about before we then launch in new markets. But yeah, the idea is, you know, we'll kind of steadily keep growing across the world service, and you'll start seeing more and more. And also, you know, it's worth mentioning that, you know, all like the vast majority of our teams already have Instagram. So like using Reels is a great way for us to then sort of get a sense of, okay, yeah, it's like a soft launch. Yeah, so they can start producing content, and particularly if they've got like evergreen content on Reels, they can sort of have that in the bank for when they launch on TikTok. That will also work on TikTok as well. So yeah, these are things we sort of bear in mind. Where do you see TikTok/Reels in a year from here? Will it take over more and more? Yes, I guess so. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
TikTok's becoming like the marketplace of the internet, I would say. Like before, you kind of had like content that would grow in other places and then kind of filter through to others, whereas now TikTok is where all new content is originating. Then that gets pushed out to Twitter later, and then to Instagram Reels later, and then finally like months later to Facebook. But TikTok is basically absorbing all these social platforms. So bar some kind of, I don't know, government intervention or something. I don't know.
Why are you looking at me?
Yeah, it is just gonna keep growing.
What else?
Right, is the algorithm not in our favor if we post with other platforms? Probably, yeah, absolutely not. But again, like with TikTok, once you've published, you can go, there are various websites. I think the one we use is called Snaptic, and you can just download it without the watermark. The downside of that is that if you asked TikTok to generate captions for you, then when it downloads, it won't have the captions on. And subtitling is quite important in TikTok. A lot of people sort of, you know, they might not be able to hear at the time, or, you know, so subtitling is a good thing to have there.
Yeah, Instagram Reels definitely punishes you if you have any TikTok branding or any TikTok features on it, because although they've basically copied it, they want it to be its own thing. So they want it to be content that you've done there, not content that you've done for TikTok and then ripped off and put here as well.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's why it helps. I mean, if you've like downloaded your video, made it in Instagram Reels, and then put it into TikTok, if you then add sort of word, you know, the TikTok native captioning then there, you know, that then sort of allows it to boost on TikTok. And then similarly, like within Instagram, you know, definitely make use of the native features within there, and you know, they'll the idea is that they then push it as well. So yeah. For news content, can we use the same video for TikTok, FB Reel, YouTube Short, etc.? Yeah, I think resources wise, often, that's the reality for most newsrooms. It's quite difficult to make sort of tailored content for each. I'd say TikTok kind of does have its own world that is slightly different. So you can sort of adapt to that a little bit more, but generally speaking, it's just, short form video. And all of these platforms are trying to replicate it in some way or another. So yeah, that's it, I think.
Yeah, I think we have 5 minutes left, so nearly it's time. Any more questions?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay, should we go get lunch?
I mean, 5 minutes is now. I could jump into VN, but I think 5 minutes is too short a time to really show you that in full depth. But yeah, definitely recommend downloading that. I mean, TikTok also have a video editing tool called CapCut, which you may want to play around with. But yeah, VN is what we use personally at the BBC if you're looking to edit natively without having to use a laptop.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference in the cultures of the different countries you're working in, or is it the same way and global that people
it's definitely so before you launch, it's definitely kind of good practice to get to know your audience first, and in each country it will be different. So for the Ukrainians, for example, we didn't have time to even look into what the consumer behavior was like before we launched, because we launched during a war. But for the Russians, for example, the first video that went viral for them was actually just an interview with Lavrov, the foreign minister. And it's like why are people on TikTok watching just a dude talk? And for the Russian part of the TikTok, it is absolutely what they engage with. It is absolutely what they like. So, it's completely different. And if you look at others, if you look at Mundo, for example, our Spanish speaking one, it's completely different. They're embracing the platform, they're embracing the visual language, they are embracing the edits. But then if you compare that to their Brazilian counterparts, they are very different. They are very much sticking to their guns of, being serious journalists and sort of, presenting everything in a very sort of balanced manner. So, to speak to your audience, definitely, but also before you launch, maybe get on TikTok and just see how people are talking there. What are they talking about? And before long, you'll notice that for some of the influencers, a lot of the influencers, they'll get comments from their followers who'll be like, oh, can you break down this for us? Like, for example, if it's a scientist, right, they'll be like, oh, can you break down the, I don't know, the oh god, fracking or something, right? And then if it's someone who's got like I don't know, like a good take, always a good take on sort of things that are happening within, I don't know, the feminist movement or something, you'll see comments and they'll be like, oh, can you like break down whatever happened to like whatever scandal that whoever's cheated on, whatever, you will actually see people just wanting those hot takes. You want because people already sort of trust these people, yeah, and they want that's what they want, really. So yeah, so basically speak to your audiences, get to know your audiences, get to know what they want, and yeah, and that's that.